Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head over to Germany once again, to the small town of Freising in southern Bavaria, very close to the airport at Munich in fact. So many of you will know that this is the home of the oldest brewery in the world, the Bayerishche Staatsbrauerei Weihenstephan, and today we're going to have a look at their Korbinian beer, which is a really nice German Doppelbock. I've never tried this one before, but what you will know if you've watched my channel for any length of time, particularly when I was doing the German reviews, you will know that the Doppelbock is one of my favourite styles of beer, and Weihenstephan are one of my favourite breweries for obvious reasons. Oldest brewery in the world, and some of their beer really is good, so this should be a very interesting review for us today. But anyway, as is usual with my beer reviews then, I'll take you through a very brief history of the brewery. It will only be 2 or 3 minutes long, but if you do want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. The brewery website's in the video description for you below. It is available in English incidentally, and you'll also find a link down there to my other reviews that I've done from Weihenstephan previously, and hopefully I can add to that in the fairly near future too, because they do have quite a few fairly recent beers that they've released that I've not been able to get a hold of yet, so hopefully I can review those for you too. And please like my Facebook page and also add me as a friend on Untappd. It'd be really cool to have your support there as well, in addition to the channel. But anyway, to tell you about the brewery itself, the origins of the Weihenstephan Brewery go back to the year 725, when St. Korbinian and 12 of his companions founded a Benedictine monastery on Narberg Hill, and thus the art of brewing was born at Weihenstephan. Now, the first historical reference to Weihenstephan was in the year 768, at which time there was a hop garden in the vicinity of the Weihenstephan monastery, and the owner of this hop garden actually had to pay a tithe or a tax of 10% to the monastery itself. Now, in the year 955, the Weihenstephan monastery was plundered and destroyed by the Huns, and this laid what actually became the foundation for what became a tradition of the Benedictine monks of having to repeatedly reconstruct their brewery. But interestingly enough, they still managed to perfect their brewing techniques during this whole time where there was all this turbulence with the brewery too, so very cool story in that regard. But in 1040 the beer brewing officially began at Weihenstephan after Abbot Arnold obtained a license to brew and sell beer from the city of Freising, thus marking the birth of the Weihenstephan Monastery Brewery. Now, between 1085 and 1463 the Weihenstephan Monastery really didn't have much luck at all. It burned down completely a total of 4 times, it was destroyed or depopulated by 3 plagues, various famines, and also a great earthquake as well. And following in the tradition of the Huns of 955, Emperor Ludwig the Bavarian destroyed the monastery in the year 1336, and then this was repeated by the French and the Swedes in the 30 Years' War, when the Austrian, and then again by the Austrians during the Spanish succession as well. But the monks didn't give up, however, thankfully, and they continued to rebuild their brewery time and again, even managing to refine their brewing art. Now, in the year 1516, Duke Wilhelm IV of Bavaria issued the Bavarian Purity Law, and thus only barley, hops, water and yeast were allowed to be used in Bavarian beer, and the breweries say that this had a major influence on the kind of characteristics of the beers that they were brewing. But sadly, as was the case with many breweries in Germany, especially monastic breweries, the Weihenstephan monastery was dissolved in March of 1803 during the course of secularization, and the possessions and rights of the brewery were then transferred to the Bavarian state, but the drinkers of Weihenstephan beer continued to drink the beer under the secular supervision of the royal holdings of Schleißheim. Now, in 1852, the Central Agricultural School moved from Schleißheim to Weihenstephan, taking with it the Bavarian brewing students, and in 1895 the school officially became an academy and then was elevated in 1919 to the University for Agriculture and Brewing, which was later incorporated into the Technical University of Munich in 1930, a very prestigious school incidentally, one of the best in the world in fact. But Weihenstephan has thus developed into a centre of world brewing technology, a fact that did massive favours for the reputation of the Bayerische Staatsbrauerei Weihenstephan. And in 1921 the brewery became known officially as the Bavarian States Brewery, or Bayerische Staatsbrauerei Weihenstephan as it would be in German, and since 1923 they've used the Bavarian State seal as their brand logo, and you will see that just on the top of the bottle here, and I'll show you that in just a second. But that's your kind of brief history of the Weihenstephan Brewery. As you can tell, a very impressive operation. They've been going officially since 1040, but as we were saying, the art of brewing was going back quite a few hundred years before that, so a very cool company indeed. But anyway, just to list the other beers you can get from Weihenstephan, each of them have different coloured labels incidentally. So you have the Crystal Weiss beer, which is the green label one, a filtered Hefeweizen, Hefeweizen beer, which has the blue label, it's a Naturtrüb Hefeweizen, that Hefeweizen beer Dunkel, which is a dark wheat beer, that has a sort of white label on it, Dunkel beer. They have Hefeweizen beer Leicht, which is a light wheat beer, Korbinian, this guy here, which is a Doppelbock, Original, which is a Munich style Helles, very nice incidentally and a little bit harder to get. There's the Pilsner beer, Oktoberfest beer, which is a Märzen style, and Winterfest beer, which is actually a Saison one. And they also do a Radler and the original Hefeweizen beer in non-alcoholic varieties as well, and also the Munich Helles style in a non-alcoholic variety too. So anyway, let's actually get on to the tasting of this beer, but first I'll just show you the artwork on this one. It's a little bit different to the artwork that's on some of the other ones. As you can see from the label there, when I bring it up to the camera, you can see St. Korbinian on the label here. It's actually really nicely presented. As I was saying, you can see on the top there, this is the Bayerische Staatscrest, the Bavarian state crest, and you can just see that on the top there. This is a typical thing of all the Weihenstephan beers, that they hold this mark, and as you can see, it is on the bottle cap as well. So this one looks a very, very nice beer. It's beautifully presented, and anything from Weihenstephan you will not be disappointed with. So this one comes in at 7.4%. It obeys the original Bavarian Purity Law, now the German Purity Law. So without further ado, we'll get stuck into this guy and get on with the tasting. Really very much looking forward to this beer. So as you can see, nice kind of smoky opening there as we open the beer up. And as you would expect, it's pouring a very nice kind of mahogany, slightly rosewoodish colour. Nice kind of beigey sort of head foaming on this one here. The Germans won't drink a beer without a good head on it, but it looks very, very nice. So yeah, as you can see, the beer's poured, as I was telling you, a sort of nice kind of rosewoody mahogany colour. It is a little bit transparent. Not sure you can see that with the levels of light, but I can actually see the computer through the beer there, so it is to some degree transparent. There's a bit of a ruby edge to it, but I think it's fair to describe it as being a nice sort of mahogany, maybe a sort of coppery mahogany, not quite as dark as rosewood probably. That's a really good way to describe it. But as you can see, there's about a finger and a half of a frothy kind of beigey coloured head on this one. It looks really nice, more of a frothy head than a bumpy head. In terms of the carbonation, there's some big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, but quite a bit of little ones just going up towards the bottom of the head there too. So overall, it looks a very, very nice beer. So let's have a look at the aroma on this one. So as you would expect from the Doppelbock style of beer, you get a nice kind of roasted caramel malt from this one. There's a nice little element of the sort of darker, more treacle or molasses sort of malts in this one, as you expect from the kind of German style of beers, especially the darker ones. You get a nice dark roasted caramel character in it. But there's a big sort of brown bready element to this one too, and some kind of woody or nutty notes in there. I'd say it's more woody than nutty, to be honest. But you can really smell that kind of toasted character of that kind of almost German cereally rye bread. German rye bread, incidentally, is beautiful, and it's a very good pairing for many, many different beers. So if you find yourself in Germany, definitely go and give that a go, and try some of the sausages as well. Some of the sausages, as you can guess, are beautiful. But yeah, nice big bready rye bread malt in this one, kind of underpins the whole beer. On top of that, you've got a little bit of a kind of nutty, woody aroma infusing in with that. Some nice toasted caramel there. It's quite sweet, but at the same time you can pick up the darker elements of molasses, or treacle as we would call it over here. Molasses is more the American term, but there's a nice kind of, quite more of a figgy sort of red fruit aroma in there too. But you can pick up just a little bit of the sharper esters that you get from raisins and plums. So overall, it smells like a really, really nice beer. As I always say, give your beers a smell before you taste them, because sometimes it can give you a really good indicator of the flavour. And it's also interesting if you know the hops that go into these beers too. This one, I'm guessing, uses probably the Hallertau hops, which are from the local area. But without further ado, let's get stuck into this beer. This is the Weihenstephan Korbinian, named after the monk who basically founded the monastery. So let's get stuck into this guy. Prost! Beautiful, beautiful beer. Obviously, before you pick out the individual flavours, just let your mouth adjust to it. But even on first taste, when your mouth is just doing that very sharp adjustment, you can tell this is a really wonderful beer. Very first time I'm trying it, actually. But yeah, first thing I'm noticing about this beer is just how smooth it is. That's one thing you always notice about German beer, is how smooth the carbonation is and how easily drinkable they are, even when they're more full-bodied beers like this. But a hugely, hugely smooth beer. But again, it has everything that you would expect of the German Doppelbock style. The caramel sweetness, incidentally, is coming out a little bit more in this than you would expect from the aroma. It's more of a sweet one than the sort of darker treacle molasses flavours. Usually in the Doppelbocks I find that the darker flavours come out a bit more, but this has got a nice interesting quirk to it, and mainly because of the fact that the caramel is a bit more of that kind of lighter and sweet caramel, if that makes sense. But it's beautifully done. But yeah, when you first take the beer in and your mouth adjusts to it properly, you get just that nice brown bready German rye bread character, and that just blankets the middle of your palate there. Then on top of that, the other flavours are building up. Around the edges of the palate, you're getting those kind of red fruity esters, and in the very back corners, you're getting a little bit of the earthy hop. That's a very typical characteristic of the German noble hops, Hallertau, Tettnanger, and there's a few others as well, but to have that little earthy character and usually a very smooth grassiness as well is what you'll typically expect from German noble hops. Really, really nice. But around the edges of the tongue, I'm finding it is actually, there is an element of that very smooth grassy character, but more towards the front of the tongue you're getting these red fruity esters, and in the flavour it is actually coming out a bit more with these sharper flavours that you would expect of sort of plums or raisins or something like that. There is a figgy presence there though, which is the more kind of mild base of that. Just pay attention to your palate and you'll notice a little oily bubble, and that's where you get these fruity esters. Right behind the very front curve of your tongue you'll get this little oily bubble, and you'll get the juicy characteristics of these fruity esters. It's really nice. I want to say in this beer as well, you can pick up a little bit of a nice sweet, slightly milky chocolate in this one. It's almost that kind of sweetness that you get when you suck dark chocolate. Not really the kind of coffee bitterness, more the kind of slightly red fruity sweetness. You can pick up that element just in the very middle of your palate there. But as I say, in the middle of the palate you've got that German rye bread, kind of brown bread malt base. On top of that you've got a nice toasted caramel and a little bit of the darker molasses coming out. And as you move out towards the edge of your palate as well, you can pick up just that more sweet and fruity character that you'd expect of dark chocolate. The whole flavours of this beer blend together very well, and that earthy hop characteristic at the very back of your palate, that gives you a good bridge between the hop characteristics of the beer and the more malty, bready characters. It's really nice, and there is a sort of, when you move into the aftertaste, it's the kind of slightly toasted caramel that's coming out, but you can pick up that grassy smoothness becomes a little bit more prominent as you move into the aftertaste of the beer. And in the aftertaste you can get a little bit more of the more complex things in there too, like the sort of woody flavours and the nuttiness to the beer as well. So a whole host of things going on in this one, but that's exactly what you expect of a German Doppelbock. A really tasty but still quite complex beer. But yeah, absolutely beautiful. There's not much more you can say about the flavour in that. Goes together really well, has everything you expect of the style. In terms of the mouthfeel of it though, definitely a full-bodied beer, I would say. Carbonation, like I told you, is very, very smooth. There's a huge malty sweetness to it, but it's actually quite dark at the same time. Particularly in the aftertaste it becomes a bit darker, but you've got a more lighter sweet caramel flavour in there, like I said. And there's a little bit of juicy character from the fruits in that oily bubble that just forms behind the very front of your tongue, like I was saying. And as you first take the beer in, you'll feel a little bit of the alcohol warmth, but as your palate and your body adjusts to you drinking this beer, it does kind of fade a little bit. There is a bit of alcohol warmth at the beginning though, and you'll notice when the liquid is actually on your mouth too, I would say there is a little bit of a kind of slightly bitterish character from the malt base of this. A little bit of, not quite coffee, but there's a bit of roasted bitterness from the malt base too. So Very, very interesting beer, and it's quite a well-known one as well, obviously, because Weihenstephan is probably one of the more well-known German breweries, but this is one thing you can always say about the German breweries. Even the ones that are bigger are capable of producing some very, very nice beer, and with Weihenstephan having lasted 1,000 years, you're not going to expect anything less. This is a wonderful beer, very good example of a German Doppelbock. Not one of the more common ones you would find, actually. You're more likely to find the Eyinger Celebrator or the, or for example, the Paulaner Salvator. This is actually one of the harder ones of the more well-known German ones to find, so do give it a go if you get the chance. It's a really, really beautiful beer, and I hope you'll take my experience of reviewing 500 or so beers on board with that. This is a very good one, and I would recommend you try it, and you will not be disappointed with anything you try from Weihenstephan. So overall, a wonderful Doppelbock beer, definitely worth trying. But anyway, thanks again for watching my beer reviews. I hope you've enjoyed this one and you're enjoying this kind of German mini-series that I've been doing for you. So I thank you again for watching my beer reviews. As always, let me know in the comments section your own thoughts on this beer. Always interesting to read them. Please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Until my next beer review, please also like my Facebook page and add me as a friend on Untappd. I hope you've enjoyed this one, and I will catch you soon with my next one, and I hope you're enjoying this German mini-series. Slàinte for now.